Girls,
Yes.
you guys know it's Sunday and the KGK book show is on. There's a very important author that I want you to watch.
I want to watch Jack and Stephen now.
I don't want to watch the KGK network show. It's so boring.
I want to go play in the snow.
All this talks about is how whites and blacks don't get along. I have white friends. What does this have to do with me?
That's not the point, girls. There is a very important man who just wrote a book. I heard that it is a very good read. I think that you should watch the interview. It shouldn't take too long.
Welcome to the KGK Book Discussion Show, starring Jerry L. Stafford. Book of the Week, Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin.
Welcome to the KGK show. Today we are going to discuss Notes of a Native Son, written by Mr. James Baldwin. Since its original publication, Notes of a Native Son remains an American classic. His impassioned essays of life in Harlem, his protest novel, and African Americans Abroad remain as powerful today as they did when first written. And now, Mr. James Baldwin. Thank you. So, Mr. Baldwin, you just wrote this book, Notes of a Native Son. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in Harlem, New York. I grew up with my mother and father. I've traveled quite a bit around the world with my writing, and I've been writing short memoirs for as long as I can remember. So, yeah. Therefore, when I began seriously to write, when I knew I was committed, that this would be my life, I had to try to describe that particular condition which is the living proof of my inheritance. I am what time, circumstance, history have made of me, certainly, but I am also much more than that.
Mr. Baldwin, who would you consider to be your greatest influences?
Well, I went to see Howard University. It was the first campus I'd ever visited. I met two guys there, E. Franklin Frazier and Sterling Brown. They probably influenced me the most.
Really? People normally say their family or their faith influenced them the most. You don't think so?
Well, my dad pressured me to become a preacher, and my mom was very strict. I loved reading, but she always made me read the Bible. That really turned me off from being influenced by my family and faith. One begins looking for influences, one finds them by the score. I haven't thought much about my own, not enough anyway. I hazard the King James Bible, the rhetoric of storefront churches, something ironic and violent and perpetually understated in Negro speech. Likewise, innumerable people have helped me in many ways, but finally, I suppose, the most difficult thing in my life has been the fact that I was born a Negro.
So, you said you wanted to be an honest man and a good writer. Do you consider yourself a good writer?
Well, I think the best writers are writers that write from their experience. In that book, I wrote from my experience. As for being an honest man, after reading that book, a lot of people would consider me bold, critical, and stubborn. Yeah.
Would you like, Mr. Baldwin, to comment on public education in America, especially with respect to blacks? And especially why on this university the black enrollment very low. I don't know if he can really respond to that or not, but just go ahead.
I'll do my best. I'll begin with the public school situation, which I know more about. And it's a very difficult question to answer too. It's a difficult answer because first of all, you can't begin to answer without feeling terribly futile. And look, the truth is, it's very hard to talk about education in this country without talking about the whole society in which it mainly fails to occur. You can hardly talk about schools, without talking about cities. And the cities are in the hands of financiers. The cities in the hands of pirates, thugs. And our children, therefore, are victims of this. Are victims of.
In your book, you discuss life as a Negro, as well as compare books that discuss the life of a Negro. After analyzing, what did you discover?
Well, I found a lot of times that when whites write about the Negro story is considered problem literature, whites talk about the problems that African Americans have, the struggle that they're going to, and how whites are able to aid African Americans. A lot of times when you see the Negro story written by an African American, they're perceived as protest literature where the African Americans are very angry about a certain situation or something that happened to them in experience, or just even the way society is built up is very angry, bitter. I compared two specific books, Uncle Tom's Cabin, and written by a white English woman, and Native Son, written by an African American.
In a certain American tradition, the story of an unremarkable youth in battle with the force of circumstance. That force of circumstance which plays and which has played so important a part in the national fables of success and failures. In this case, the force of circumstance is not poverty merely, but color, a circumstance which cannot be overcome, against which the protagonist battles for his life and loses.
In your book, you said that you fear and hate white people. Why is that?
Well, I think that I fear and hate white people because it seems as though they fear and hate us. In my book I wrote,
I think I know what you're talking about. In your essay, Nas is Gone, I quote, "We do not know what to do with him in life. If he breaks our sociological and sentimental image of him, we are panic-stricken and we feel ourselves betrayed."
So what I really meant by that quote was that if we as African Americans step out of our social status, then I feel like white people feel threatened by us. And so they fear us, and that makes them hate us.
How do you think literature written about African Americans make them feel about themselves?
Well, I think that the reaction that African Americans have to literature written about the Negro story has been quite negative. African Americans have not only separated themselves from white people because of anger and bitterness, but have separated themselves from each other. A lot of times you see violence amongst the African American community. I also think that a lot of times African Americans come off as very impatient and have become frustrated with lack of change in our community and in our society about the way that they're portrayed, both in literature and just in life.
What the novel reflects, and at no point interprets, is the isolation of the Negro within his own group and the resulting fury of impatient scorn. It is this which creates its climate of anarchy and unmotivated, unapprehended disaster. It is this climate, common to most Negro protest novels, which has led us all to believe that in Negro life there exists no tradition, no field of manners, no possibility of ritual or intercourse, such as may, for example, sustain the Jew even after he has left his father's house.
How do you think society has changed?
Well, Harlem, what I know, since I was a little kid, hasn't really changed much. Negroes are still the last to be hired and the first to be fired. Our school systems will never compare to those of the white kids. And our housing systems have changed too. They've kicked us out of our ghettos and replaced them with small, really expensive homes that only few Negroes can afford.
I know you're not faith-based, but what role do you believe faith plays in the life of other African Americans?
I actually have a quote that I would like to read straight from the book to help answer that question. Here it is right here. It says, "Their faith may be described as childlike, but the end it serves is often sinister." I think that a lot of African Americans look up to their pastors, to God and their faith, to really help push them to endure a lot of the trials and tribulations that African Americans go through. I think that a lot of times their faith is childlike, because just like how you would have a child looking forward to a really great gift for Christmas and something happens financially and you can't afford one, and you can't get the child a gift, and they've been great for as long as they could have, and it just really disappoints them. And I feel like a lot of times for African Americans, our faith is childlike because we look up to God for a change, but it never really comes. That's something that really discourages me from being influenced by my faith. It just doesn't seem real.
When I was told it takes time, when I was young, I was being told it will take time before a Black person can be treated as a human being here. But it will happen.
So that's all we have for today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the KGK show. If you would like to tell us how you feel about the book, feel free to call at 888-623-2323.
Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for calling KGK Network. Do you have any comments regarding today's episode of KGK Book Discussion? Yes, an interview with James Baldwin about his new book, Notes of a Native Son.
Yes, I wanted to say I thought the book was great. I love the intellectual yet reflective writing style of Mr. Baldwin. The fact that he was able to analyze literature and compare it to the realities of the Negro life shows how knowledgeable and cultured he is. I know a lot of people respect Mr. Baldwin's literature and his essays, but I never understood why until after reading this book. In his writing, Mr. Baldwin was very articulate about the Negro story and expressed his concerns in his essays with brilliance despite his subjectivity.
Thank you for calling KGK Network. Are you calling to offer comments regarding today's episode of the KGK Discussion, featuring an interview with James Baldwin about his Notes of a Native Son?
Yes, I'm a social essayist. However, I'm not a fan of James Baldwin's writing. In this book in particular, I felt that Baldwin was too critical and opinionated. His tone seemed very arrogant, and he was extremely critical of controversial issues surrounding Negroes in a white society. Even in the panel discussion played during the show, Baldwin was asked to comment on the education system with respect to Negroes and began to criticize the city of New York. Though Mr. Baldwin has the intentions of expressing concerns that most educated Negroes dare not utter, his radical ideals seem to be ahead of his time.
Thank you guys for watching it.
What Douglas Steffens now?
Wow, that was interesting.
I learned a lot.